What is up, everyone? Piscean here, bringing you the used, abused, misunderstood species in advanced astrological dissertation on female life philosophy with observational natal case studies in mental health. So, excuse me. As most of you know, or if you don't know, I'm a radical feminist. I was born female. I was put on testosterone at age 19 for 7 months, testosterone gels specifically. I went to Family Tree Clinic in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and they ruined my life. They absolutely helped me destroy my life. So after 7 months, what I realized is, after pretending to be a man and going through the motions of testosterone, is that men have it way easier. They always have. There is no argument. In my eyes, men have always had it easier. It's just, we'll talk about it more in this video and more videos to come, but you'll see a pattern in our history, in our cultural collective, where men have always been the superior and women are the getting the bottom of the barrel, end of the brunt. So what I'm going to do here is go over the case of Sylvia Plath, Virginia Woolf, and an anonymous contemporary subject known as Subject N. And we're going to focus on the conjunctions of Algol, the mediatory role of Chiron, and the weight of Saturnine moon imbalances as astrophilosophical engines of a distinctly female existential crisis. And it concludes that the same configurations which, under patriarchy, manifest as madness, suicide, or chronic dissociation contain the seed of a radical female life philosophy. The metamorphosis of the abjected feminine into an oracle of unassailable interior authority. Dissertation provides a technical yet soul-centered framework for mentors, astrologers, and mental health practitioners working with female clients, carrying the Algol wound specifically. So, first we have to name the species. Woman, as a category, has functioned historically as the second sex, the object of use, the receptacle of abuse, and a consciousness so habitually misread that her very sanity is pathologized. Literally every day. Philosophers, from Aristotle to Schopenhauer, have defined her by lack. Psychoanalysis named her a dark continent. Yet within the astrological tradition, the natal chart of the female native offers a radical counter-narrative. It shows that wounds that she carries are not accidental, but form the precise architecture of a philosophical mission. And this dissertation takes as its sub-object of study the female life that is simultaneously used as muse, carer, sexual commodity, abused by systemic violence and internalized patriarchs, and misunderstood by a culture that denies her interior complexity. We name this condition the Algol complex, a configuration anchored to the fixed star Algol, or Beta Persei, the decapitated head of Medusa, which in the female chart symbolizes the severance of feminine power from conscious life, the body turned into a site of shame, the transition, and the voice choked by terror. I have Algol conjunct my Taurus ascendant. But also, when integrated, the birth of an unsilenceable truth teller. And that is exactly what I'm going to become over these next few years. And starting yesterday, I'm telling my truth. I'm telling my story. I don't give a fuck if you get mad, get angry. So first I want to talk about Sylvia Plath, who was born October 27th, 1932. She has Sun in Scorpio, Moon in Leo, and Pisces rising, whose suicide at 30 dramatized the Algol-Chiron conjunction in Taurus, opposing her Mercury-Pluto intensity. Virginia Woolf was born January 25th in 1882. Sun in Aquarius, Moon in Libra, and Pisces rising, whose drowning enacted a literal dissolution under a Pluto-Algol conjunction in a massive Taurus stellium. And we're also going to look at my chart, because I don't give a fuck. Why not? Sun in Pisces, Moon in Libra, Taurus rising, conjunct Algol. A contemporary woman who navigated gender transition, detransition, and the subsequent reclamation of her body and voice, currently moving through her Saturn return. Which, by the way, my Saturn return isn't until like a few more years. I still have several years. All three share a common matrix though, okay? Algol, activated by personal or outer planets, a distressed or out-of-bounds moon, a heavy Saturn influence on the sense of home and voice, and the healing moon of Chiron prominently placed. Their biographies are used not as deterministic outcomes, but as celestial case law, illuminating the philosophical trajectory from use, abuse, misunderstanding, to the conscious embodiment of the Medusa gaze. Okay. So, a feminist cartography of the night chart. First of all, the Faculty of Genius Astrofuturism employs a tripartite methodology for female mental health cartography, and this is what that looks like. So, first we have the fixed star under the whole sign house system. We use the tropical zodiac with the whole sign house system to avoid cusp ambiguity. The star Algol, which is currently 26 degrees 14 Taurus, is treated as a degree-sensitive point with an orb of 2 degrees for conjunctions to planets or angles. Algol's medieval reputation for losing one's head is reinterpreted through a feminist lens. It signifies the point at which feminine power is decapitated by patriarchal violence, only to become an apotropaic emblem when consciously claimed. The triad of shadow bodies, Black Moon Lilith, Chiron, and the South Node Ketu. So Black Moon Lilith, the me and Black Moon Lilith, not the true. It indicates the exiled feminine rage. Chiron, the wounded healer, shows where the deepest injury becomes a source of mentorship. The lunar nodes, especially Ketu and its dispositor, reveal karmic habits of self-negation. We pay special attention to aspects between these bodies and the moon, Saturn, and the ascendant. Okay? Saturn and the moon, the internalized patriarch. So the condition of Saturn by the sign, house, and aspect indicates how the native internalizes the law of their father. When we look and we see a hard Saturn-Moon aspect, like a conjunction, square, opposition, or quincunx, these are near universal in women with severe depression and identity fragmentation, as the nurturing principle is placed under continual censure. Progressed stations of Saturn and the Saturn return mark critical thresholds of reclamation. You look at the role of the out-of-bounds moon. In Plath and Wolf, the natal moon is at extreme declination above 23 degrees 27, rendering the emotional body extra sensitive to collective currents and unmediated by social convention. This quote-unquote wild moon is a hallmark of female genius and instability. For each case, we present a natal data table followed by an analysis of the Algol configuration, the Saturn-Moon dynamic, the Chiron placement, and key progressions and transits at the time of crises or transformation. Let's talk about Sylvia Plath. And I've talked about her before on the channel. Chiron, Algol, and the inescapable head. So we're looking at the natal data. We see we're talking about tropical whole sign placements, houses. So we see she had Sun at 4 degrees 02 Scorpio in the 9th house, with Moon at 28 degrees 22 Leo in the 6th house, and it's out of bounds. DECL declination, 27 degrees north. Okay. Pisces rising in the 1st house, 0 degrees 08. Okay. Mercury, 27 degrees 04 Scorpio in the 9th. Venus at 11 degrees 02 Sag in the 10th. Mars at 26 degrees 23 Leo in the 6th, conjunct the moon. Jupiter at 18 degrees 03 Virgo in the 7th. Saturn at 28 degrees 58 Capricorn in the 12th. The ruler of the 11th and the 12th. Okay. Uranus is at 21 degrees 07 Aries in the 2nd. Neptune is at 9 degrees 24 Virgo in the 7th. Pluto's at 23 degrees 42 Cancer in the 5th. Chiron's at 23 degrees 13 Taurus in the 3rd, conjunct the fixed star Algol, which is 26 degrees 14 Taurus, in orb of 3 degrees 01. Black Moon Lilith, me and Black Moon Lilith, is 24 degrees 52 Gemini in the 4th house. Okay? And we also see Rahu at 15 degrees 40 Pisces sitting in that 1st house in the ascendant. The ruler is Jupiter in the 7th. And the vertex is 21 degrees 13 Libra in the 8th. So what does this tell us? Let's break it down. The Algol complex. So Chiron and Taurus opposing Mercury and Scorpio. Plath's Chiron sits precisely on the degree of the wounded healer in the sign of the body and voice. Taurus in the 3rd house, within a 3 degrees conjunction to Algol. The star of the severed feminine head is fused with the wound that teaches. Okay? Chiron opposes Mercury at 27 degrees Scorpio in that 9th house, forming a 3 degrees 49 opposition that tied the wound of speech directly to the intellect, writing, and the university, the 9th house. Mercury itself is part of a T-square, very important. It opposes Uranus and Aries in the 2nd house, and squares Pluto and Cancer in the 5th house. Okay, thus the mercurial function, which is language, thought, communication, is plugged into an electrical circuit of sudden disruption, trauma, and volcanic creativity. Plath's poetry famously cuts through the polite surface of 1950s femininity, but the same configuration left her mentally unshielded from the collective shadow. Let's talk about that Saturn moon quincunx and the internal censor. So the moon is at 28 degrees Leo, and it's conjoined with Mars at 26 degrees Leo in the 6th house of daily work, routines, sickness, health, giving a fiery, dramatic, emotional nature that demands expression and recognition. However, the moon forms a near exact quincunx, 150 degrees, to Saturn at 28 degrees Capricorn in the 12th house, and it's an orb of 0 degrees 36. This aspect of perpetual adjustment between the radiant Leo moon Mars and the isolated punitive Capricorn Saturn creates a rhythm of emotional inflation followed by devastating collapse. Saturn in the 12th indicates that the persecutor is an internalized father figure, operating from the unconscious. The out-of-bounds moon declination, adding 27 degrees, further ensures that her feelings were too large, too intense to be held by any earthly container. Psychiatrically, this maps onto the cyclothymic highs and suicidal lows documented in her journals. Progress trigger at the time of suicide. It's February 11th, 1963. On the day of her death, Plath's progressed moon had entered Aquarius, moving toward a square to her natal sun, bringing identity crises. The progressed sun had just entered Capricorn, a depressive ingress, and transiting Saturn in Aquarius was opposing her natal moon Mars, while squaring her natal sun. So transiting Uranus in Virgo also opposed her natal Venus, the ruler of the 8th in her chart, and squared her natal Mars. The Algol Chiron configuration, however, was not directly activated by transit at that moment. Instead, it functioned as a permanent background wound. The decapitated head that she could not stop writing about. Her suicide was a final attempt to silence the unbearable voice of that severed head, a voice that in her poetry had already achieved immortality. In her philosophical implication, her Plath's chart demonstrates that the Algol-Chiron conjunction in the creative 3rd 9th house axes does not necessarily allow the native to heal in the conventional sense. Instead, it demands that she give language to the unspeakable so that others may live. The used, abused, misunderstood female becomes the poet who articulates the abuse, even if her physical body cannot survive the articulation. Her life philosophy, posthumously, is that the dark feminine will speak and the world must listen. Okay. Virginia Woolf, Pluto Algol and the Drowning of the Fixed Earth. So, Virginia Woolf, tropical whole sign placement, Sun at 5 degrees 23 Aquarius, sitting in that 12th house. Moon at 28 degrees 08 Libra in the 9th house, out of bounds. Declination is 25 degrees south. Ascendant 11 degrees 02 Pisces. Mercury at 20 degrees 21 Capricorn in the 11th. Venus at 14 degrees 22 Pisces in the 1st, conjunct the Ascendant. Mars at 27 degrees 09 Taurus in the 3rd, Jupiter at 14 degrees 39 Taurus in the 3rd, Saturn at 5 degrees 44 Taurus in the 3rd, Uranus 16 degrees 23 Virgo in the 7th, even Neptune at 13 degrees 50 Taurus in the 3rd, Pluto at 27 degrees 24 Taurus in the 3rd, exact conjunction with Algol, an orb of 1 degrees 10, Chiron at 22 degrees 10 Aries in the 2nd, Lilith mean at 19 degrees 13 Cancer in the 5th, Rahu at 4 degrees 31 Sag in the 9th house. Okay, so this is a lot, but let's observe this. Pick it apart for what it is. Pluto and Taurus in the death of the body. Virginia Woolf's chart presents the most concentrated Algol signature of the 3 cases because, first of all, Pluto, the planet of death, rebirth, and the inexorable pull of the underworld, sits at 27 degrees 24 Taurus in the 3rd house within a degree of Algol. This conjunction is part of a staggering Taurus stellium. Mars at 27 degrees, Jupiter at 14 degrees, Saturn at 5 degrees, Neptune at 13 degrees. The sign of embodiment, stability in the natural world is overloaded with every category of planetary energy. action, expansion, contraction, dissolution, and transformation. The third house placement links the stellium to the mind, communication, and immediate environment. Wolf's lifelong struggle was to keep her consciousness tethered to a body in a world that constantly threatened to dissolve. Pluto-Algol conjunction indicates that her very existence was an ongoing encounter with the decapitation of the self. The question was never whether she would break, but when and how. Moon in Libra, ruler Venus in Pisces, and a fluid self. Moon is at 28 degrees Libra, it's out of balance in southern declination, making the emotional body highly porous and attuned to aesthetic and relational harmonics. Ruled by Venus in Pisces, conjunct the ascendant. The Moon-Venus blend dissolves boundaries between self and other. Wolf's famous moments of being are astrologically legible as Moon-Venus-Pisces episodes of mystical unity, but the dark side was a terrifying permeability, the inability to screen out the world's pain. The Libra Moon's trine to the Aquarius Sun provided a rational, intellectual superstructure, Bloomsbury essays, but the deep structure was a chthonic Taurus swamp. Saturn-Moon dynamic, no direct hard aspect, but a stellium pressure. So unlike Plath, Wolf lacks a major hard aspect between Saturn and the Moon. Instead, what do we see? The entire stellium in Taurus, including Saturn, opposes their ascendant ruler? No. Taurus opposed Scorpio, which is in her 9th house. Her Moon is in Libra, ruled by Venus in Pisces. Saturn in Taurus is in the Moon's exaltation sign. Saturn in Taurus is stubborn, sensual placement, but it forms no direct holy-make aspect to the Moon. Mental fragmentation appears to be driven more by the overloaded Taurus house. Third, opposing that 9th house axis via transits and the Pluto-Algol-Aldebaran cluster. Saturn's role is that of an anchor that is simultaneously the weight that drowns. The body, Taurus, cannot sustain the spirit. Now we look at the progressed trigger at the time of her suicide. March 28th, 1941. Wolf drowned herself in the river Oise. Her progressed moon had entered Capricorn and was applying to a conjunction with her natal Mercury, 20 degrees Capricorn, rationalizing the decision to die. Transiting Saturn in Taurus, newly entered, was exactly conjunct her natal Pluto-Algol in orb of less than 1 degrees, while transiting Uranus in Gemini squared her natal Mercury. The progressed ascendant had reached early Cancer, turning the need for a safe home into an impossible demand. Saturn return in Taurus had occurred a few years earlier, restructuring her entire relationship to her body and her voice, but the transit of Saturn over Pluto-Algol in 1941 was the final unendurable weight. Water, which is Pisces, Neptune, and dissolution, became the literal and symbolic medium of escape from a Taurus body that had become a prison. So Wolf's chart teaches that the Algol conjunction with an outer planet, especially Pluto, designates the native as a vessel for collective shadow. Her suicide was not a personal failure, but a structural exhaustion. She carried a weight of the unspoken trauma of her class, gender, and era. Her philosophy, articulated in A Room of One's Own and the novels, insists on the material and psychological conditions for female creativity. The body, Taurus, must be safe, funded, and undisturbed, precisely what she could never achieve in this 3D world. Ascendant Algol and the severed feminine reclaimed. This individual has Sun at 8 degrees 09 Pisces in the 11th house, Moon at 6 degrees 14 Libra in the 6th house, 23 degrees 55 Taurus rising, applying conjunction to Algol, an orb of 2 degrees 19, Mercury at 18 degrees 31 Pisces in the 11th, Venus at 0 degrees 02 Pisces in the 11th, Mars at 14 degrees 07 Capricorn in the 9th, Jupiter at 17 degrees 55 Libra in the 6th retrograde, Saturn at 20 degrees 53 Cancer in 3rd house retrograde, Lord of the Year at age 21, stationing direct in progression. Chiron at 0 degrees 22 Aquarius in the 10th conjunct the midheaven. Pluto at 24 degrees 17 Sag in the 8th. Lilith at 23 degrees 08 Cancer in the 3rd. Rahu at 25 degrees 19 Aries in the 12th retrograde, of course. So let's talk about the Algol complex on the ascendant, identity as decapitation. So Subject N was born with a Taurus ascendant tightly bound to Algol. The Medusa head is not merely an inner complex, but the very face she presents to the world. The body, from birth, is the site of a profound wound around gender, embodiment, and the right to exist as female. I wish I would have known my chart before I did what I did to myself. In early adolescence, this internalized severance manifested as gender dysphoria. She pursued medical transition, a literal attempt to reshape the body away from the perceived monstrous feminine. At age 19 to 20, she detransitioned, beginning the Saturnine labor of reclaiming a female body that had been pharmacologically and surgically altered. Thank God I didn't actually get surgery, but this is a conceptual thing. Chiron in Aquarius on the midheaven, the public wound as vocation. Unlike Plath and Wolf, subject N has Chiron exactly conjunct the midheaven in Aquarius. The wound is not private, but inescapably public. Her story, transition, detransition, and the philosophical questions it raises is not merely a personal struggle, but a collective challenge to binary gender ideology. The 10th house Chiron indicates that her healing is inseparable from a vocational call to speak, write, or guide others through similar terrain. The progress chart at age 21 shows Saturn stationing direct in Cancer, and the third ending a 2-decade internal reconstruction. The progressed Sun at 29 degrees Pisces, dissolving the last remnants of a borrowed identity. Saturn return is a site of alchemical integration. Subject in Saturn return is exact in March 2034 at 20 degrees 53 Cancer in the third house. So transit Saturn will conjunct its natal degree, simultaneously squaring transiting Uranus and Aries, triggering the 12th house Rahu, and forming a grand water trine with the Pisces stellium. The years leading to the return, including transit Saturn's conjunction with her ascendant in Algol in 2029, and squares to her Pisces Sun, Venus, Uranus in 2030-31, are a meticulously timed sequence of body reclamation and vocal authority building. By the Saturn return, the native will have transformed the Algol decapitation to a stable, self-defined identity. She represents the living possibility that the Medusa wound does not require suicide, Plath, or drowning wolf, but can become the foundation for a philosophy of radical embodied female sovereignty. Her mentors report that she is currently building a professional platform around writing and advocacy using a progressed Mercury in Aries to speak without apology. Subject In's chart demonstrates a shift from a modernist to a meta-modern Algol complex, where Plath and Wolf are crushed by the weight of their configuration. Subject In benefits from a cultural moment in which detransition and the critique of medicalized identity are emerging discourses. The same stars in a different century can manifest not as a tragedy, but as a testimony. Let's look at a comparative synthesis. The Algol complex and Saturn Moon knot. Look at the feature, Plath, Wolf, and subject N. We see that Algol activation, Chiron conjunct Algol at 3 degrees 01, Pluto conjunct Algol at 1 degrees 10, and ascendant conjunct Algol at 2 degrees 19. These are orbs. And we look at the Algol house, so it's in the third for both Sylvia Plath and Virginia Woolf, and it's in the first for subject N. Chiron rule, wound of speech, opposite Mercury, Chiron in Aries, second, no major Algol aspect, Chiron in Aquarius, 10th, trine moon is public calling. Okay, and we can even see the moon condition. Out of bounds Leo, quincunx Saturn, out of bounds Libra, no hard Saturn aspect, moon in Libra in the 6th, trine Neptune, no Saturn affliction. Looking at Saturn moon dynamics, quincunx, adjustment, illness, no direct aspect, body overload, no direct aspect, Saturn in 3rd retrograde, voice frozen. Mental health crises, bipolar depression, suicide, bipolar psychotic episode, suicide, gender dysphoria, detransition, identity fragmentation. The outcome, female life philosophy. So we learned that Algol's house indicates the primary theater of the wound. In the 3rd, it attacks speech and thought. In the 1st, it attacks the body and identity directly. The planet conjoined to Algol determines the mechanism of the complex. Chiron for Sylvia Plath makes the wound itself the teacher, demanding articulation, while Pluto for Virginia Woolf makes it a transformative, annihilating force that burns through the psyche. The ascendant, subject N, makes it the entire life's costume, the mask that must be removed, examined, and then worn consciously. Saturn-Moon relationship moderates the capacity to survive the complex. A hard Saturn-Moon aspect intensifies the inner critic, and a body-mind split. A softer or absent one allows more room for maneuver. Though the Algol pressure remains, subject N's moon trine Neptune and sextile Chiron provides an intuitive spiritual buoyancy that Plath and Wolf lacked. Saturn return is, of course, the critical juncture here. Plath's Saturn return was approaching but not yet exact at her death. Wolf had passed her Saturn return some years earlier but was undone by the Pluto transit. And subject N's Saturn return arrives with a fully supported progress architecture, testament to the possibility of alchemical integration. I also want to talk about what philosophy emerges from the ashes of the Algol complex. First, the acknowledgement of the severance. Female native must recognize that she has been decapitated, severed from her instinctual body, her authentic voice, her erotic wholeness, by a world that fears a Medusa head. This is the depressive or dysphoric phase that used and abused station, and Plath that produced the bell jar, and Wolf the novels of fragmented consciousness, and subject in the detransition narrative, which I can't even call it a narrative because it actually happened to me, and I was on hormones for 7 months. Second is the gaze that petrifies the abuser. The Medusa head, once consciously reclaimed, becomes a weapon of truth. because the woman who has integrated Algol can look directly at the structures that harmed her: patriarchy, the medical establishment, literary gatekeeping, and name them without flinching. This is the misunderstood face transforming into conscious opposition. Progressed Mercury and Aries ascendant in the posthumous power of past poetry, and Woolf's essays all demonstrate this. And the oracle of the body. The end-stage philosophy is not transcendence of the body, but its re-sanctification. Algol, in its highest expression, grants the woman the authority to speak from the flesh without apology. Subject in Saturn return will still her body as her own. Her Chiron and Aquarius on the midheaven will channel that authority into collective healing. And this is the true room of one's own, a room built inside the bone. So, yeah. These are some tables. Let me see here. In my next video, I think we're going to talk about, either the natal incision and emergency anthology of the two filling engines, or we're actually going to get more into this gender stuff, because it's very important for me to actually talk about what's happening in our world. So yeah, I will be making more political videos and more controversial videos, whatever you want to say. Here to come. I hope to see you there with peace and love. Piscean out.